For my independent novel, I did A River Runs Through It by Norman Maclean. A River Runs Through It is a memoir by Norman Maclean. Its main focus centers around his favorite hobby, fly fishing, and how it affected life of his family. The story takes place early 20th century, starting from Norman's childhood and skipping to the summer of 1937, where he and his brother Paul are in their mid-30s. Most of the action takes place during this time and tells the story of a fishing trip he had with his brother. Norman Maclean lived from December 23, 1902 through August 2, 1990. His father was a Presbyterian minister and fly fishing expert. Most of Maclean's writing is inspired by his move to Montana, where he lived most of his life. His children encouraged him to write down all of the stories he liked to tell, thus A River Runs Through It was born. One Fosterization I picked up on was Foster's chapter about Christ figures. I believe that Norman's brother, Paul, is portrayed as a Christ figure. He matches a few of the criteria listed by Foster as classification as a Christ figure, such as good with fishing, in agony, last seen in his mid-30s, and spends a lot of time in wilderness. Norman even describes Paul as the best fisherman anywhere. Paul is someone everyone looks up to, portraying him as an important person, like Christ himself was. Foster's chapter about baptism also applies here, as most of the story takes place around water. When anyone walks through the water, they are described as wading through it, which is a term often associated with baptism. At one point, Norman chooses to focus on Paul's wet clothes, which according to Foster is a sign of baptism. Also, while fishing, Norman says he finds a new hole for a fresh start on life. He feels renewed by finding a new hole to fish in. Foster's chapter about blindness can play a role in this book as well. Norman's mother is said to have terrible vision even with her glasses on. It's like a partial blindness. According to Foster, she must have figurative vision of truth and ideals, which is proven by her kindness to her children. She knows what's right and wrong and teaches her children how to behave when acting up, like when they get in a fight in the beginning. When Paul is ashamed later by a poor action he commits, he covers his eyes for a while to blind himself from reality and enter the comfort of blindness and ignorance. The main literary element here is plot and structure. Looking at the structure of the novel, this one isn't divided into chapters like others conventionally are. It's all one big story. Because of this, everything sort of flows together smoothly, a lot like a river, a main symbol of the novel. The fluidity of the novel itself complements the fluidity of the actual story and plot. On the readability scale, I'd give this book a 6. It's a pretty average difficulty, nothing too crazy, pretty basic, yet still an educated sounding language. Overall, you shouldn't have any trouble understanding this book. On the literary scale, I'd give this an 8. While reading, I could sense some strong literary vibes. The title talks about a river, and I found great symbolism value with the river in the story. In addition, there were many other symbols and messages hidden throughout. On some levels, I feel it could be as literary as I Lay Dying, so I approached this book in the same way. All the Fosterizations and symbols seem to connect with each other and enrich the story as a whole. I would recommend A River Runs Through It. It feels good to analyze the many literary things that come up and gives a great opportunity for readers to experience a beautiful story and deep literary significance at the same time. Even those not into fishing can enjoy this, like myself, if you really stick with it. It all pays off in the end.